come as no surprise to you that most of the world's vodka is made in the Northern Hemisphere. But rather than going to Russia for the vodka leg of our intrepid journey, we've decided that we'd rather be somewhere a bit warmer. So, we're here down under at home. What you probably don't know is that one of the world's very best vodkas happens to be made in New Zealand. Alright, well, we've actually managed to track down a couple of local vodka experts, and I'm going to introduce one of them to you now. They're both actually distillers. Hey Jeff.
Hey Sam, excellent. How are you?
Oh, well.
Hey, look, it's a pleasure to pass on what we've learnt about distilling over the years for you here today. And we've got a couple of props which I'll talk about in a moment. The basic core for distilling starts with anything that is really high in starch. So really common any of the grains. Here we've got barley or wheat or maize. You can also use sugar cane, and molasses are also commonly used. In our case, what we do is we use wheat, and we find that when you grab the wheat, you grind it and ferment it for a period of about 10 to 12 days, we find that the starch in here converts really easily to sugar in the fermentation. And the ease of that process is important because when you heat it in the distillation to gather the steam, you just want to gather your condensed sugar only. You don't want to get all the other things that have come out of the wheat because that will taint the flavour. Now probably the best way, the simplest way to really illustrate that clearly is in the classic moonshine still, where you get your mash, your fermented grain, you heat it and you gather the steam. And Ray Tom has got an excellent example of that.
Moonshine, that sounds like a cool idea. I think we'll have to check that out. Well, thanks a lot for your help in there.
Fantastic, Sam. Hey, and when we come back, we'll talk about our process, which is unique, which is high saturation distilling, and also the last stage of the process, which of course is the filtering, adding the water, and bottling.
Oh, high saturation distillation sounds pretty fancy. I think we're going to have to learn a bit more about that distillation process before we check out this moonshine.
Hi, my name is Ray Toms. I've been in the home brewing industry for over 20 years now, and of course in the early days when I first started, you weren't allowed to actually distill your own alcohol. The change in the law happened in 1996, and in these more enlightened times we can now produce our own range of spirits to very high quality and at very reasonable price. So let's have a look at how the process starts. Okay, one thing you need to know or learn about the production of alcohol is that all alcohol is made the same way, and that's the action of yeast on sugar. Be it beer, wine or spirits, it all has to start out in the fermenter, and that's what we have in here. This is a heat-controlled cupboard. Yeast likes a nice, stable heat environment. It doesn't like fluctuating temperatures, so that's what we try and do in something like this. We have our fermenting bucket here, and that is happily converting, the yeast is happily converting the sugar to alcohol. When yeast works on sugar, it produces three things. First of all, it produces heat, so we have to be careful that the temperature doesn't go too high. Secondly, it produces carbon dioxide, which is what you see bubbling out of the fermenter here, the airlock here. And thirdly, of course, more importantly, it's producing alcohol. And the yeast works on the sugar, uses it up and converts it into alcohol. Now we've got the wash into the still, we'll show you what happens next. We plug the still into the power and boil the wash. Now with the wash, it's important to realise that the alcohol has the lower boiling point, so it's going to boil off first. So as it boils off, it rises up here under the slight pressure that's created by boiling and comes up through this centre pipe here. Now this is two water jackets on these pipes. There's one on the inner and one on the outer, and water flows through here into that outer jacket, then across into the inner jacket, and then out to the drain. As the alcohol vapour and a little bit of water comes up through this pipe, it hits that first water jacket and the water condenses back into liquid and then continues up because of the pressure behind it, to the top of the pipe. At the top of the pipe, the water being heavier than air then falls back down via these side pipes, and the alcohol vapour continues on around here, where it's turned into a liquid by the second water jacket here. And then it drips out here in the form of alcohol at around about 80% by volume. Now, as we're distilling, there are two important facets that you should be aware of, and that is that we're producing some poisons which we have to take out of the system, and they're produced at both low temperature and high temperature. Now, the low temperature ones, we're fortunate because they're low temperature, they vaporise even earlier than the alcohol, and so by throwing away the first 50 mils we produce in the terms of a reflux still here, then we get rid of them all out of the system. The high temperature ones, we just simply cut the process off before we get there, so we don't go into those. They're fusel oils, and fusel oils are where your hangovers come from, so we strenuously want to avoid that. Types of stills, what you're looking at here is a reflux still, and there's also a pot still. A pot still is a very simple still, and it has simply a pot and a condenser, and it's the more traditional types of still which are still used in terms of whisky production and brandy production today. And this is a reflux which produces a different type of alcohol which is completely odourless and tasteless, well, at least that's the aim. And this is a good example of a reflux still. Now that we have our alcohol, the first step is to water it down to drinking strength. We don't really want to blow our heads off with it at 80% still. So we put the water in and cut it normally to about 40. There's not a lot of point in drinking spirits over 40%. And the next step is to carbon it. And this is activated carbon here. It's a special grade of carbon. And you'll see that react with the alcohol when I pour it in. In actual fact, it's probably reacting to the water more than the alcohol, which is why we water it down first rather than put it into it at 80%. Now, in that process you've just seen, it is bonding to fusel oils that might have got through our system and reacting with the water. When it sinks to the bottom, it'll slowly clear, and we leave that process for a while. There are ways of speeding it up, but I like to use the way that takes the longest, which is about 3 weeks, and it slowly sits in the bottom and bonds with any aromatics or volatiles that are in the alcohol. What we're trying to do is completely take all of those out, so that when we add back flavour, as you'll see in a moment, there's nothing there to counteract the flavours we're putting in. After we've done that and it's settled to the bottom and it's been sitting there for 3 weeks, we then have to filter that carbon out. So what I normally do is tip it into another bucket and leave most of it behind, and then do that process 2 or 3 times. Okay, now we have our alcohol as we get to the very important stage of flavouring. Each stage of the process is fascinating in itself, as you've seen already, and flavouring is no less fascinating. But here we differ slightly from the way that it's done commercially. What we're trying to do, as we've already discovered, is produce a basically odourless and tasteless alcohol, but we don't want to leave it like that. We want to add some flavour back to it. In the commercial industry, they use fruit and grain in the distilling mix to add those flavours back, and there's various different methods of doing that, which I'm sure you've already discovered. We can just add a flavour, and vodka's a case in point there, and that's an example of a whisky flavouring, and that's an example of a liqueur flavouring. Okay, now we've seen how the whole process is done. There's only one step left, and that's the most enjoyable bit, and that's sampling the fruits of your labour.
Here we are, back at the bar with our vodka master Jeff, and he's going to tell us a bit more about the purification and distillation process.
Cheers, Sam. Well, in recent times, one of the common steps to make that spirit even more pure is to distill it several times, or multiple distillations as it's called, which is quite simple. It's just taking the spirit after you've distilled it once and then running that through the still again. In the case of 42 Below, we do that 3 times, and then we do a unique step, which is we take that spirit and we actually drown it in spring water. We flood it, add a whole heap of water to it to bring the alcohol level right down to only 6%. We take that and then we distill it a 4th and final time, and we find that just removes any of those last little lingering impurities that you don't want in a very pure spirit, because with spirits, purity equals smoothness.
Right, okay. And what about the last bit of the process?
That's also really important, which is the filtration and the bottling, and you don't want any impurities to sneak back in that process. So for 42 below, we pump our spirit through 35 highly compressed filter plates, and the spirit goes into the filter plate in one corner and comes out the opposite corner and then goes through the 35 plates like that, which is just another way of making sure nothing unwanted gets through the process.
And can you tell us a bit about that bottling process?
Well, that's also very important because everything has got to be totally sterilised, so the clean spirit is sitting in a very clean environment. And that's the final step of the distilling process and the bottling process. And then a totally different skill comes into play, which is the marketing and distribution, which is another story again.
Alrighty, now I'd like to introduce you to Luke. He's going to give us the lowdown on what happens with vodka behind the bar.
Thanks,
Fire
Sam.
away, mate.
Hey, listen, most establishments will have a defined range of vodkas depending on what sort of clientele they get through. But most vodka companies will produce a range of vodkas from a neutral vodka to a flavoured vodka. Most neutral vodkas are a good base for cocktails because they don't overpower the other fresh fruits or ingredients that they put in, whereas flavoured vodka can be used to enhance those fresh fruit flavours with passion fruit, honey, with mandarin, lemon and currant style vodkas. So establishments that want to target vodka connoisseurs or even develop vodka connoisseurs will take additional steps to enhance the style and flair of their experience. Some of these will include keeping your vodka in the fridge, chilling it down overnight and getting it nice and chilled. Also, keeping glassware in the fridge is another good thing because it enhances the drinker's experience at the bar.
Right, now we're moving on to the tasting process, and I've spotted a fellow over here who looks like he might be a bit of an expert. G'day mate, I'm Sam.
Hey Sam, I'm Todd.
Hi Todd. You appear to perhaps be a bit of a connoisseur of vodka. What can you tell us we might be looking for when we're trying out a good vodka?
Well Sam, if you're buying, I'd be happy to sit here and talk about vodka, something I'm very passionate about. But I guess what we'd start off with if we were tasting vodka, and that's what I'm doing right here, we'd start off with the nose. So obviously, as in with a wine tasting, you'd take a good whack at the nose there. You'd be looking for a sweet, maybe grainy style, smooth, controlled finish for a nice vodka. This one here is wheat with hints of aniseed that I can smell. What I wouldn't like to have is too much heat. That would show me that it was more of an entry-level vodka.
Yeah.
Then we'd move on to clarity and colour, and with the clarity and colour I would also be looking at the texture. A good vodka should taste creamy in texture or come across creamy in the texture if it was frozen.
Yeah.
One expert Russian taster once told me that vodka should be valued not just on the clarity but for the crystalline luster as well, kind of like an internal energy. And finally, obviously the best part of all would be the taste.
Yeah.
So what you need to do when you're tasting vodka is to really enjoy it. You're looking for a good vodka, a soft taste again, not hard. You're looking for a controlled finish, no burn factor as in the nose, no burn factor in the drinking. You know, you can pull out the hints of aniseed in the taste, the wheat, and the sweetness again, obviously the sugar levels. This one here is smooth and a little bit grainy as well. And that's pretty much it, Sam. That's Vodka 101.
Very good. Any other tips you might have?
Well, what I would suggest, if you were tasting vodkas, that you actually lined up your favourites in a row, because you can truly only get your favourite vodka after lining them up one by one. And
Sure.
taste them.
Okay, Luke, why don't you tell us a bit about some of the classic drinks that are made using vodka.
Right, so one of the famous cocktail made from vodka is, of course, the Vodka Martini.
I thought that was made from gin.
Originally it was, but a man named Bond, James Bond, changed history when he asked for a Vodka Martini shaken, not stirred. So I think I'll take you through how to drink and make a Vodka Martini. Okay, first thing, of course, you need your martini glass. Some vodka purists say that a martini shouldn't have too much vermouth in it, that basically you just wave the bottle over the top and cast a shadow and that's enough vermouth.
Right.
But the more vermouth you put in, the sweeter the martini, the less you put in, the drier the martini.
Right.
So you always ask your customer, do you like it sweet or dry?
Yeah.
So first things first, you want to chill your glass down. Grab a large amount of ice, put it in the glass. Grab your vermouth. Bartenders have different techniques of making a martini. They develop their own style.
Yeah.
This is how I make mine, but it varies to the bar and the person.
Yeah.
I put my vermouth over the ice, like that, and just let it sit and chill.
Yeah.
I then grab my mixing glass. Alright. Always handy to have a measuring glass, okay? Grab your vodka. Martini should have around 2 ounces of vodka in it, which is 2 large pours. Ask your bartender, ask your customer if he wants it shaken or stirred.
Yeah.
Today I'm going to show you how to shake it.
Yeah.
Also, there's 3 different types of martinis. There's a martini with a twist, which is with lemon.
Yeah.
So you grab a bit of lemon rind,
Yeah.
and you'd add that to it. With olives, so you grab some olives, you do it like that. Or a dirty martini, which is when you crush some olives in the
Right.
vodka and then remove it,
Yeah.
so you get a tainted sort of flavour to it. You then grab a good heap of ice again, put it in your glass, grab your shaker, whack it, give it a good shake, about 8 good shakes. Pour it back in the glass. Grab your strainer. I like to double strain mine, so I normally have a fine strainer as well.
Yeah.
Pour your ice out with your vermouth, so you just get a nice coating on the glass,
Yeah.
like that. Strain it and get rid of any of the impurities, like so.
So depending on the vodka, it could be filtered 5 times now.
Very true. So then if they decide they wanted it with a twist, you grab a bit of lemon rind, and you add it to it, or with olives, you'd add olives instead.
Yeah.
And that is your vodka martini, shaken, not stirred.
Very good. All right.
Sam, another famous cocktail is the Moscow Mule. Story has it was created by 2 executives of 2 companies, one a vodka company and one a ginger beer company. Story has it that both weren't doing too well, so they got together and had a bit of a brainstorm and thought about making a cocktail and pushing it at bartenders around New York and getting it popular, so it built up their sales. So I'm going to make one for you. Basically, the secret or the ingredient to this one is to have fresh limes, lots of fresh limes, not lime juice, but fresh limes. So you get a good handful of those. Gome or sugar syrup, which is 50-50 mix. Basically, it's just hot water with sugar added. It sweetens it up and it takes a little bit of the bite off. So about half an ounce of that. And then the fun part, which is called muddling. Get in there and work it. So you extract all the oils and juices out of the skin of the lime. So you really get that lime flavour through. Choose good vodka and do a good 2 ounce pour. our shape. This drink is best served in a tall glass, so you can sit there and enjoy it on the back deck in summer and top it up with a good dollop of
Ginger beer.
ginger beer.
Good.
A good variation on this one is if you use a bit of fresh mint. It really adds another different flavour to it. Good summer drink. That's all yours. Enjoy.
So where does the mule part come into it, Luke?
Because you have a few of those, mate, and it really gives you a kick.
You're not wrong. Right, Luke, thanks very much for all your help and information. Have you got any last thoughts you'd like to tell us about vodka before we wind up?
There's just three things you need to know about vodka, and that is know your customers, know your vodkas, and always serve them chilled. That's what you need to know.
Brilliant. Well, that's a wrap for our vodka module. Catch you later.